Hello and what is up, YouTube? My name is G3Iron. In the past few days, I've made a couple of comments talking about POE 2's announcement, specifically saying I think it was a mistake. I feel like I need to clarify this in its own little discussion piece. This is not a critique piece or a hit piece or in any way, shape, or form an attempt to say that anything is going wrong with Grinding Gear games or with Path of Exile. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to throw blame. I am trying to describe my own sensations and my own observations about Path of Exile. And so this is what I mean when I say announcing POE 2 was a mistake. This is where I'm coming from. This is the background of what I'm saying and meaning here for me, just for me as a player, not arguing about game design, not arguing about building a market, not arguing about players. This is just my own personal take. There is a difference between changes like massive core gameplay mechanics and tweaks like targeted updates with new expansions, leagues, and essentially with new content that gets released. I guess I viewed Path of Exile as a huge piece of content, like a book. Each new update is like a new chapter. Each new chapter comes out with a few edits and some updates to previous chapters because of continuity in the story with characters and plot lines that matter. Path of Exile is no longer, and hasn't been for some time for me, like this. It is no longer a huge piece of content, a book with updated chapters. Massive changes in themselves come that require rewrites to previous understanding. What once was seen as a problem and required some changes is now something that is monolithic and cannot be changed. What once was something that was monolithic and a hallmark of the player's experiences and you could rely on that not changing is now seen sometimes as a problem and requires changing. I used to think that with each new expansion and league, we would build towards a better version of Path of Exile. New things were coming like content and items and skills and character choices and uniques and divination cards. That is no longer my sense. All of those new things are still coming, but that's no longer my prevailing, overwhelming sense each league. This is mostly on me. This is not on Grinding Gear Games. The team at GGG does the best job out of any gaming company on the planet communicating with their player base. Because Path of Exile 2 or 4.0 has been announced, I originally thought when it was announced during the year, and during the year following, during the 2020 cycle, that changes that were coming were to prepare us players for the new content of 4.0 and POE 2 and what was coming with that. However, and this was foolish on my part, I did not anticipate just how much the team at Grinding Gear Games wanted Path of Exile to change prior to POE 2 and to 4.0. I had thought the team at GGG liked the direction of the game during the 3.0 development cycle and were hoping to make POE 2 in the image of POE 1 during the 3.0 cycle. That's not on anybody at GGG. That's not based off of a quote, off of a statement. This is just my own silly player perception. This is all my own fault. It is now apparent that GGG has a vision and an idea for POE 2, for 4.0, that they like better than the current iteration of the game and are now forcing POE 1 to meet that standard. All right, does that make sense? I hope I don't need to go to Paint. I'm happy to go to Paint if you guys would like me to go to Paint. But essentially, I thought POE 2 was where we were headed based on what was enjoyed about POE 1, as opposed to POE 2 is where we're headed based on the things that we don't like about POE 1. Hopefully that makes sense. POE is no longer comparable to an ongoing update of a book or series of books with new updates and edits for continuity's sake. If you're writing a book and you come out with a new chapter and you find out, oh my goodness, here's a problem because now character X, I need them. They died earlier in the series or something, and now I need them to still be alive for some other plot point. Or you might notice, oh, there's a tension and there's a dynamic and there's relationships here that I want to flesh out or I want to interact with. Now I need to go back and maybe make some tweaks and make some edits to things. That's what I thought POE used to be, with each new league being a new chapter with a couple of edits. But now it seems like that's not what it is. POE now is more akin to a comic book series where one set comes out and then another set comes out that retcons or changes or simply even ignores previously beloved aspects of the story. You've heard discussions on this, I'm sure, whether it's in different fantasy circles or whether that's in different sci-fi circles, where a reboot or a remake, or even just taking something that moves a piece of media, a story from a book to a movie or from a book to a TV series. I feel like when that happens, oftentimes you have to cut things out and things get lost, etc. That's partly of what I feel like is going on with POE right now, is that some of the things that I really love about POE are getting ignored or getting pushed aside or getting changed. And that's fine. That's totally fine. That's on Grinding Gear Games. They're the developers of the game. They get to make that call. I'm not advocating they shouldn't be making that call. I'm simply saying that for me, that's what I'm experiencing at the moment, that retcon feeling that I'm getting is not an enjoyable feeling. I used to look forward to each new league and each new hype cycle for the previewed uniques that could open up new possibilities for builds. Used to look forward to those Twitter teases, to those announcements. We go, oh my goodness, what is this unique and how can I fit this into this other build? Or how could I even build around this unique entirely? Or, oh, maybe this is just garbage entirely and there's no way to make this work. Why on earth would this be released in this way? There must be a creative way to use this. And then sure enough, people would figure out creative ways to use it. Uniques nowadays often introduce specific mechanics that simply aren't fully fleshed out to build around. Like, I'm looking at you, Ward, like as a mechanic, that seems like a pretty cool mechanic to build around Ward, but it seems like it's so underpowered and so underdelivered on that's it's just awkward for players to even get excited about and to go, oh yeah, Ward came out, in 3.15, and don't we all love that? Like, don't we all want to interact with that? Don't we all want to build on that? Honestly, I think a lot of the player base wouldn't even know if Ward existed in the game or would be able to pinpoint when Ward was introduced. I don't feel like that's a cool aspect of the mechanic. Like, in comparison, we all can pinpoint when alternate quality gems or alternate quality uniques or alternate style uniques, alternate version uniques were introduced into the game. We all can pinpoint back to Heist and go, yeah, that's when that happened because that was awesome. We all can pinpoint back to when cluster jewels were introduced into the game. That was Delirium, and that was incredible. That was game-changing. Like, Ward, what got added? Are you seeing the comparison there? Hopefully you're seeing the comparison there. I used to look forward to new divination cards to target farm with Magic Find builds. Do you guys remember that? Divination cards used to get announced, and we used to talk about in our community, maybe not in other communities. I know that there were other communities that talked about it, but maybe you weren't a part of them. But at least for us here in G3, we used to go, oh, that's cool. How can we target farm that? Where can we go to target farm that? And how does this change the economy of Path of Exile 2 with this specific new divination card that's coming out? How would this be useful? Is this just going to be a common drop and nobody's going to care about it? Is this something that's more useful for SSF than in a trade league or in a trade environment? And nowadays, divination cards, I just find myself looking whenever a divination card gets announced, I'm just like, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. I used to look forward to trying to target farm those with Magic Find builds. Like, each league, I would try and build like a Wind Ripper, Magic Find, Tornado Shot build and during the 3.0 cycle. And that pretty much stopped when the Bow League update came out. Like, when monster damage changes occurred, I think my last softcore Magic Find character was 3.8 in Blight, which I played most of Blight in hardcore, but I think that was the last time that I made a Magic Find character. Was 3.8. 3.9 changed a lot of things with Metamorph for Bow League. I'm not saying that you can't Magic Find now. I'm just, again, expressing for me. Maybe I'm just too much of a pleb. I used to look forward to new interactions with core known gameplay mechanics and new items, new skill gems, and new monsters. But now, core known gameplay is changing on a league-by-league basis, on a regular basis. Like 3.15 was pushing us in one direction, saying, no, all these things need to change because the game needs to get more difficult. And so we're going to do this. And, and that is a, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not quoting Chris, but that is a paraphrase from Chris. Oh no, there's even more coming. We're not doing everything in just one cycle. And I'm getting the feeling with these announcements for 3.16, like, yes, there are buffs. Yes, there are positive things that are coming, but also there's a lot of nerfs and a lot of changes as well to core stuff that, in my opinion, should already be settled on. Like, this is the core aspect of what Path of Exile is. We should be good with this. And what we're experiencing is no It's not from the game developers side of things. And that's fine. They can change that as they'd like. And I can also say, look, I'm not necessarily excited to relearning core gameplay mechanics along with learning new league content on top of that. It just seems like that's a lot all at once. The new content that does come out is not comparable to previous 3.0 cycles level of content for my own enjoyment. Like, there is no way that I can compare Harvest. While Harvest was amazing for what it did for crafting, I cannot compare the experience of setting up my garden and fighting the monsters to Delve. I can't. For me, Delve as a concept, when it was released, was entirely new for Path of Exile. It was incredible, the level of depth and the level of change and the level of even character-specific builds that would need to be made in order to tackle that content. Harvest as content, you walked around and clicked on seeds, and then you went in and you blew up monsters, and then you crafted better. That's what it was. That as a content was vastly different than the other content that we've had, whether it's Expedition or Ultimatum. Like, I think that having so many different leagues where we're essentially fighting in a little zone, whether we create the zone through Expedition or whether the zone is already created for us, it's forgettable. It's not exciting. It's like strong boxes or even to some extent Elrion missions. It's not thrilling. It's not making me say I need to make a specific build for this content because that would be fun to do. It just doesn't compare. Like pre-2020 development cycle and content and styles, like even during 2020, we got some hits and some misses, and that's understandable, I thought, because of COVID. But now more and more I'm thinking it's because the creativity is being designed more towards PoE 2 rather than towards League releases. I could be wrong, and the League for 3.16 could just absolutely blow our minds and be amazing. Maybe it's Synthesis 2, and I'll just shut up at that point and be an absolute fanboy and definitely just freak out for that. But that's where I'm at right now. The 3.0 cycle of development, like from Orioth on, has just been incredible. Like, consider the depth of Betrayal, and even Heist and Delirium, and then you compare them to like Harvest and Ultimatum and Expedition, and you throw into that some things like release dates getting messed around with because supposedly AAA titles are a big deal, which nobody's, like, no one is playing Cyberpunk anymore, right? I mean, shout out if you are. Drop a comment if you're playing Cyberpunk, because it's such a good game that, 10 months ago we had to delay the release of a major content piece of Path of Exile, which normally would have come out. But anyway, yes, there's lots of different things right now that have happened. I guess that's a summary statement. There's lots of different things that have happened right now over the last year during 2021 that are making me slowly disconnect from Path of Exile. And again, I go back to the book analogy, or the book word picture. Like, I used to feel like it was a monolithic book and we were getting new updates and new chapters. And as you read the core part of the book, or the core part of Path of Exile, as you learned about the core part of Path of Exile, you were relatively safe to say this isn't changing. But with a lot of core things changing during 3.15 and during 3.16 now, it just seems like a lot. It seems like there's a lot of change going on, and so be it. I thought PoE was an awesome game on its own, and PoE 2 4.0 would be a content update, not a game redesign. And I feel like that's something what's going on. We're like on the verge or the tip of, I don't want to sound too dramatic there, but it feels like the game is being redesigned. Not completely, not totally, but it feels like there's some aspect of that going on here. So I'm going to cover the 3.16 cycle. I'm excited for it. I've got enough hopium that I think that 3.16 still could be fun. And I hope that during 3.16, I've refined my engagement and my delight in the game, and my enthusiasm just skyrockets for PoE, because 3.16 is the league that turned it all around after a really rough 2021. But I'm also going to keep in mind the advice that I've given out regularly to you all in the community over the last few years, and that is, if a hobby is no longer enjoyable for you, don't spend time on it. So if PoE 3.16 becomes something that isn't enjoyable for me anymore, then I'm going to find somewhere else to spend my hobby time and enjoy it. That Don't take that as a threat or like as a big drama thing. Just realize that's where I'm at. It used to be, again, that this was a book, and I felt like I was reading the book and really getting the book. That's part of what was exciting to me, especially about making discussions for Path of Exile, was, hey, we're learning things together, and then we're sharing these learned experiences together. And on the one hand, you might say, oh, well, Iron, there's even more things for us to learn now, so that should be a thing. Yes, but I don't feel like the things that we're learning are building on the previous things that we're learning. I feel like the previous things that you spent time learning and investing in, throw it out. Forget it, because the new things that are coming are rewriting that. I do not enjoy that. I do not enjoy learning something for it to then constantly be changed over and over and over again. I like things getting added, and I like things getting tweaked. I don't like fundamental things getting changed. There you go. So there's my old man explanation or rant, get off my lawn speech on where I'm at with Path of Exile and Path of Exile 2, along with the development cycle for 3.1.6. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a great league, but that's just where I stand at the moment. So hopefully you all are excited for 3.1.6, and hopefully you're still enjoying Path of Exile. And if you're not, hopefully you're enjoying something else. I see a ton of players playing Jeff Bezos online. So hopefully if you're playing that, you're enjoying that. I am not going to play that game. Anyway, for all sorts of other different reasons. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I hope 3.1.6 is the league that a Mirror of Galandra drops for you. If you'd like any more information about the topics we chatted about today, links are provided down below in the video description. The G3 community has grown a ton over the last several years, and that's thanks to viewers like you and faithful Patreon supporters. Big shout out to longtime supporters and first-time supporters for this month.